What has been the reaction in Australia to England losing the second test? Are they triumphant, or are they just despondent about the quality of the opposition? Do they want more of a test?
A pretty typical Australian reaction, to be honest. Very happy that their own team has won. Pretty damning of England's performances in the first two games, understandably. I think everybody would like to see a higher quality contest. The games have been pretty one-sided so far. And of course, the next game is a big one, the Boxing Day Test match at Melbourne, which can often bring 80, 90, maybe even 100,000 people into the ground. So England have it all to do.
So attention now then, turning to team selection, Michael. Do you think Zach Crawley needs to come in to maybe offer something different at the top of the order?
Well, the problem is none of the replacement players have had any cricket. England's batting has been poor. They were bowled out for 147 in the first innings at the Gabba and 236 at Adelaide. And they're the principal reasons why England have been struggling. There are other reasons as well: selection, questionable decision at the toss at the Gabba, drop catches, wickets off no balls, lots of reasons. But fundamentally, they're not getting enough runs. So those batsmen are under pressure. But the problem is anybody they bring in, whether it's Zach Crawley, Johnny Bairstow, Dan Lawrence, they're the reserve players. They haven't played. There was no cricket before the first test because of rain in Queensland. No state games because of the COVID quarantine rules. They had to do 14 days hard quarantine in Queensland. And we've just had two tests which have taken up the last 2 weeks. And so the reserve players haven't been playing any cricket at all. So you have to balance the struggles that the current incumbents are having against the fact that anybody you bring in has to be rusty. So I don't know which way they will go. I mean, it's a difficult balancing act, that. For myself, I would probably give the batsman another go. I would change the balance of the side for sure, and I'd bring in a quick bowler and a spinner. But I'd probably give the batsman another go. Whether they will do that, I don't know. Anybody who gets dropped can't really complain if they do get dropped, because performances have been poor, and they've been poor for quite some time now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an acute problem, isn't it, with the pandemic in terms of game time experience, you say there. But, Michael, it's a bit of a chronic issue, isn't it, at the top of the order? 21 openers in less than 10 years. One of those was Alistair Cook, who played 78 tests. What is the problem with developing openers? Is that due to the ECB's coaching, or is it due to cultural forces and that magnetic effect of the shorter forms of the game?
Wow, that's a big question. First of all, English cricket historically has always produced great test match openers, or really hard, tough test match openers. Way back, you go back to Hobbs in the early 20th century, and Hutton and Sutcliffe, Boycott, Edrich, Gooch, and on until Cook, who seems to, at the moment, be the last of the lineage. As you say, they've gone through a lot of combinations since Cook and Strauss finished together a decade ago or so. I mean, there are some fundamental issues with English cricket. The majority of the good months in the summer are given over to the Blast and the 100, as administrators prioritise white ball cricket and short form cricket. So the championship is pushed to the margins at the front of the season and the back end of the season, which means pitches are often poor. The standard of pitches in county cricket is very poor. And it may just be that there is a cycle as well. Sometimes countries go through cycles where they may struggle to produce, whether it's fast bowlers, spinners, opening batsmen or whatever. But I don't think our domestic game is set up right now to produce top order batsmen and spinners in particular. And it's no coincidence that those are the two areas that we're struggling with.
You mentioned England are just not getting enough runs. Root and Malan have proved that England can bat in Australia. Why have the rest struggled so much, do you think?
Well, Root is head and shoulders above anybody else in terms of quality in the team. He is a great player. Great players don't come around that often. England are very lucky to have him. He's more than 1,600 runs now in the Test match year. I think there are only 3 people who've scored more than that in the history of the game in a calendar year. So you're looking at one of the very best that the game can produce, and England are lucky to have him. There is a gap then between his quality and the rest. But you'd say that some of the rest are not playing to their potential at the moment for lots of reasons. Take Ben Stokes, for example. hasn't played much cricket since July when he stepped away from professional cricket to look after his mental health for a while. So came into that first Test match at the Gabba having had no cricket for months. And as I mentioned, some of the domestic cricket in England makes it pretty hard for openers at the moment. The pitches, Duke's ball conditions, not particularly conducive to producing a lot of good top order players. So there's a variety of reasons, and clearly the team is a bit low on confidence, having lost 2 games. And this is a very good Australian team. It's not a great Australian team by any stretch. There are frailties in their batting as well. England have produced lots of opportunities, haven't always taken them. But in terms of the bowling, Australia's bowling, it is a good, relentless attack that they've got. If all the 3 main seamers are fit and firing, that's Cummins, Stark and Hazlewood. They're 3 outstanding bowlers. Cameron Green is a really eye-catching young all-rounder. And they've got a Test match spinner with more than 400 test wickets, one of the best of all time. So it's a pretty good attack if you're just struggling a bit with confidence.
Michael, talk about England's attack now. Nasser Hussain, your distinguished colleague, has told us he thought England got the bowling attack wrong for both Test matches. If so, why haven't they learned their lessons? Or does this go back to the point you made previously about the lack of development, maybe, of decent spin options?
Well, English cricket is struggling for spin at the moment, but that's a different question from the selection. They've got things wrong here in Australia. I don't think people would have a problem if England were playing to their potential and getting beaten by a better side. I think most people in sport can accept that situation. But England are making life very difficult for themselves at the moment with some of the decisions they're making, whether it be at the toss at the Gabba, team selection at Adelaide. It seems like they'd made up their mind weeks in advance that they were going to play an all-seam attack for the Adelaide Test, which was a pink ball day-night Test match, because historically the ball favours the seamers in a day-night pink ball Test. But when you got to the ground and looked at the pitch, it looked a pretty dry, biscuit-coloured pitch, really, the kind of pitch where you'd want to play a spinner.
I wanted to ask you, Michael, about Australia calling up the uncapped seamer Scott Boland, and just what we can expect from him.
Well, I don't know whether he'll play. We'd expect Pat Cummins to come back into the team. He obviously missed the last Test match because of the COVID scare or whatever. He was a close contact. I'm sure he will come back. And then it's just whether the others like Stark and Richardson are still fit and ready to go. So I wouldn't have thought Scott Boland would play unless there's an injury scare or they're concerned about 1 or 2 of these bowlers playing back-to-back Tests. He was the Sheffield Shield or Domestic Player of the Year about 2 years ago. He's 32 years of age. I haven't seen that much of him. I've seen a little bit on kind of YouTube of Australia's domestic cricket. And he looks a decent, tall, takes it away from the right-handers. And, you know, has obviously been successful. He's in good form. He's had wickets in the Sheffield Shield games that he's played this year. He's Victorian, so it'll be his home ground. He'd be well used to the surroundings. But I wouldn't expect that he would play.
Michael, got 10 seconds. Quickly give us a prediction. Who's going to win that 3rd Test, if anyone?
Well, Australia are stronger, they're favourites. But if England get runs, then Australia's batting has got some frailties as well. So you never know.